Okay, here's the deal. You probably know how to make pancakes already. Maybe your go-to recipe is the box mix, or you learned from your grandma, or maybe you even saw our own pancake video where we showed you how to make tasty and fluffy pancakes thanks to the perfect amount of baking powder. But if any of you have ever made pancakes before, then I know you've experienced this very sad thing. Yep, that's right. It's a dense, flat pancake. That's not what we're going for today. We want fluffy, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to get there. So let's do it. This series is all about breaking down the science behind deliciousness so you can become a more confident cook. And don't worry, if you're just here because you love food and science, welcome to the club. Welcome to the Fluffy Pancake Challenge. Now, you could get fluffy pancakes just by adding more baking powder to the recipe. Like I said, that's what we did in our previous pancake video. But today we're talking about why using just more baking powder doesn't always work, and what else you can do to ensure that every single one of your pancakes turns out light, airy, and fluffy. But before we get into the Fluffy Pancake Challenge, we have to talk about the science of leavening. To make something rise, you need a leavening agent. This is something that's going to trap air and expand during cooking, giving you the desired rise. Now, there are a few different options when it comes to leavening agents, but we're going to focus on baking powder since it's my favorite. Baking powder is a combination of two different things. It's either baking soda plus an acid, or it's cream of tartar plus a base. Either way, the important thing is that once it comes into contact with liquid, it triggers a chemical reaction that releases carbon dioxide gas. For fluffy pancakes, we're going to use baking powder that reacts with water or milk. It's important to know that this reaction only happens once the baking powder comes into contact with liquid. As soon as that happens, those gas bubbles start forming, which brings us to the first ingredient in harmony, flour. Now, when it comes to flour, there are so many different options, and they will all react differently. We recommend all-purpose flour for this recipe. Now remember, we're trying to get as much air into these pancakes as possible. Using cake flour, which has a lower protein content than all-purpose flour, actually helps trap more air. But if you don't have cake flour, you can just use all-purpose. Just know your pancakes might not be quite as fluffy. The next ingredient in harmony is eggs. They help bind all the ingredients together, but they also contribute protein. Now, the protein in the eggs will interact with some of the starch molecules in the flour, creating gluten. Gluten is really important for things like bread, where you want a strong, elastic structure. But in pancakes, we want it to be tender and fluffy, so we don't want too much gluten development. And now finally, we have our last ingredient in harmony, milk. Not only does the milk hydrate the flour and the eggs, but it also contains water and proteins. Remember that the baking powder only activates once it comes into contact with liquid, so the milk will help activate that baking powder and release all that carbon dioxide that's needed to make these pancakes fluffy. Now that we understand the science of the individual ingredients, we can put them together and start mixing up our batter. And here's where things can go wrong. First, sometimes people think that the more they mix, the better. That's not necessarily true for pancakes. Remember that the baking powder has already started reacting with the liquid as soon as we combine them. And when we keep mixing and developing the gluten, we end up with tougher pancakes. Instead of trapping air, the gluten strands form a tight network that prevents air from getting in. So don't overmix your pancake batter. After combining everything and getting a few lumps, you should gently fold everything together until just combined. Now, if you're wondering what I mean by folding, I basically just mean holding the bowl like this and bringing the spatula up and over without stirring. What you're looking for are lots of air bubbles throughout the batter. The more air bubbles, the better. Sometimes you have to break up the larger bubbles and evenly distribute them throughout the batter. And you can do that by gently tapping the bowl against the counter. Now, the easiest way to do this is by whisking it by hand. But if you've got a blender, you can use that as well. If you're going the blender route, just make sure you use the whisk attachment. I recommend blending the batter for about 30 seconds, but if you're whisking, you should go until your arms get tired. We've got the perfect fluffy pancake batter, but we're not quite done yet. Now, to make the most fluffy pancakes possible, we need to talk about the perfect flip. Once your pancakes are cooking away on the griddle, you'll notice that they start to look like this. There's no more wet batter, and they're kind of dry on top. This is when you want to flip. But if you flip too early, you won't have enough time for the other side to cook, so your pancakes will be raw inside. So timing is everything. You can flip your pancakes like normal pancakes by flipping the pan, or you can flip them like crepes by sliding a spatula underneath. Whichever method you choose, you still want to keep those bubbles intact. Since we're working with raw batter, it's easy to pop those bubbles, but you don't want to. So move quickly and confidently when you flip your pancakes. Now, depending on your cooking setup, you may need to reposition the bubbles. You can do that by lifting up gently on the spatula or the edge of the pan. Remember, the more air bubbles you have, the fluffier your pancakes will be. I know it seems like a lot of steps for a breakfast food, but trust me, the payoff is worth it. Fluffy pancakes are not only delicious, but they're fun to eat. And honestly, who doesn't love a fun breakfast? All right, after all that talk about pancakes, I bet you want to get cooking. Now, while you're whipping up your perfectly fluffy stack, take some time to appreciate the science happening right in front of your eyes. Appreciate the release of carbon dioxide from the baking powder, the formation of gluten from the flour, and the binding power of the eggs. Take a moment to realize that you are truly a modern alchemist, turning simple ingredients into edible magic. Or if you want to learn more about the science of other delicious foods, check out the series in the description below. Finally, if you like what we do here, subscribe so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.